Good evening and welcome to this Ask Me Anything session for Genomic Medicine. I'm handing over to Dr. Kenny Langlands, who's our course director and who's going to start the session with a little bit of information about the program. And then we will also have our panelists introduce themselves, who are all current and former students.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I don't want to spend too long going through the background of the course, which I'm sure you've researched. I think it's interesting to understand a little bit about the team. We've got some students, past and present here, who can speak with experience about their time on the course, which hopefully you'll find helpful. And there'll be plenty of opportunities to ask questions, so put them in the chat. And hopefully we can address all of your queries. So I think to give you a little bit of background about myself, I can make my slides advance. So I'm the course director for the MST. I'm a research scientist by background. Was involved in cancer research in the UK and the US. And then I got involved in medical education. So I come from those two perspectives. So my contribution to research was recognized by my being elected to Royal Society of Biology, but I'm also senior fellow of the of Advance HE, formerly the Higher Education Academy. So I have that understanding both of the genetics and the educational side as well. So I think it's also useful to set the scene by thinking a little bit about the background of the course. So it might answer some of your questions, and then my colleagues and current and former students can talk a little bit about their experience. So the course has been running for a little over 10 years now. It was initially launched in response to a request for what was then Health Education England for English higher education institutes to get involved in upskilling the clinical workforce so that developments in genomic medicine, particularly those that arose following the completion of the 100,000 Genomes Project, could actually be translated into better health outcomes using state-of-the-art techniques. Over the last 10 years, we've been in dialogue with Health Education England, and more recently, the Genomics Education Programme, to make sure that the course is fit for purpose. So the course has undergone revision to make sure that it reflects the state of the art. And also we had to re-tender for our commission places, so NHS employees are able to attend the course, and the NHS will pay for fees. I think the important thing on this slide is that historically the course focused on educating doctors, i.e. those at the sharp end who are implementing genomic services. But over the last few years, I think it's been important that the course supports and reflects the broader genomics workforce. And there are individuals from a range of different backgrounds, from fundraising through pharma, clinical science. We've got Aris here, comes from a pharmacy background, nurses, and Alejandra here, through to doctors. And we have got Coropat, and we've also Kivlin as well, who's representing that sort of healthcare scientist route through genomics. And over the last 10, 11 years, we've educated 400 students. Again, Aris, as a former student, can say a little bit about how the course has helped him to develop his career. So, firstly, perhaps Kivlin, you could say a few words about yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Kenny. Hello, everybody. My name is Kivlin, and I'm one of the MSc Genomics Medicine students in my second year. I'm also a healthcare scientist in cancer genomics here at the Cambridge University Hospitals at the East GLH. And I'm also one of the other half of the student representatives, so with my colleague Karapat. And so this is in my second year. So mainly really focused in somatic variant interpretation, anything to do with equity, global health, and standardizing genomic medicine nationally. So yeah, I'm really excited for today, and I can't wait to go deeper into like my experience so far, which has been great, and your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kivlin. So, Coropat, say a few words about yourself.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Kenny. So my name is Gorapat. I'm family physician in Thailand, and I'm still working in Thailand now. And I also being a researcher in population health and nutrition research in Thailand. And I'm based in University Hospital in Bangkok. So my work now focus on cardiometabolic disease, especially diabetes and lipid disorder. And I'm start working on genomics like about 5 years ago. So I really want to learn to implement genomic medicine into my research practice. I want to move beyond like one size fits all medicine, and that's how I decided to apply to this program. So basically, I'm study like a 2 years program, like a part time. So I fly back and forth between UK and Thailand. So I'm looking forward to discuss with everyone today. Thank you.
Thanks, Corapat. Alejandra,
Thank you very much, Dr. Kenny. So I'm Alejandra. I'm one of the nurses that is doing the master. I am MST year 2, housekeeping. Actually, I am one of the specialist nurses working at the lysosomal disorder unit. This is a very specialized center. There are only 5 in the UK, and I will look after rare conditions, and that is my main uh, look for. That is why I applied to the master, just to be sure that I got all the knowledge for the future that is quite bright for this rare disease. I have to say, I haven't put here my email address, but I'm more than happy to put it in the chat for anyone that wants to contact me. So that's not a problem at all.
thank you, Alejandra. So, Aris, tell us a bit about your experience.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for inviting me today. My name is Aris and I'm a pharmacist currently accrediting for a consultant pharmacy level. And I work at the Cambridge University Hospitals in the East Genomic Medicine Service Alliance. I have about 10 years of experience in hospital pharmacy across many different areas in medicine and different specialties. And I never knew what I wanted to specifically specialize in. So I always like to look at things that were cross-cutting and learning about principles that are applied to many different specialties in different areas, and essentially being a specialist generalist, if I can make that term. And that's when I went into formulary and medicines optimization, leadership at systems levels. And we started seeing a lot more genomics and precision medicine, stratified medicine principles coming into mainstream medicine. And that's when I decided I needed to learn more about this field, which I'll talk about in the next slide. And since I did the, sorry, I haven't finished that. Since I did the master's, essentially, I have worked in a number of different regional and national roles for genomics. So until recently, I was working with NHS England's genomics unit, which was a newly formed department that was focusing on bringing out vision about genomics in the UK. So the UK at the moment is very much ambitious about implementation of genomics and becoming the global leader in genomics and genetics medicine. And more recently, I've moved on to the regional leadership role where I work as a consultant pharmacist in genomics, essentially striving to bring pharmacogenomics into mainstream care, bringing it for the multidisciplinary team into routine care, and also raising the profile of pharmacy in genomics and the profile of genomics in pharmacy. And I also work in a number of different roles where I work with Professor Dr. Timothy Hearn at Cambridge University on a research project, and the UK Clinical Pharmacy Association representing the Genomics Specialist Committee for Pharmacists. And I also work with a private company working on AI and clinical decision support in pharmacogenomics. And why I did the master's in the next slide. I was always interested in genetics because it's a code for life. I actually almost studied molecular biology and genetics before going to pharmacy, but I changed to pharmacy in the last minute. And when I realized that the NHS was so ambitious around genomics and this program was available, I thought this is the opportunity to make both of my dreams reality and actually specialize in genomic medicine as a new specialty that's coming into the field. And it's allowing me as a pharmacist to think about the best way to optimize medicines for my patients, going down to the deepest scientific level, which is genetics, that influences almost everything. And it enables me to, the current roles that I have enable me to combine all my clinical background and this scientific background to transform services and do research into all these fun and exciting fields and implement pharmacogenomics safely in the NHS. And I don't know if you wanted me to talk about my career journey, Jennifer and Kenny,
I mean, it's a long journey.
Okay.
I think it's great to have that maybe up our sleeves if people ask, as they usually do,
Sure.
about what a career progression looks like through and after the program. So as you can see, we have some really amazing students on the program, and being part of this really great cohort, we're usually about 50 or 60 students in 1 year, spread across the different programs. And also we have a full-time MPhil that also feeds into the program. And so being part of that cohort is a really big selling point in a way of our program, in that it has such a rich, it's so stacked with amazing people. And actually, let me include myself in that list as well. So I'm Jennifer Marsh. I'm the coordinator for the program, which means I manage all the administration and also the funding. So if you wanted to start asking questions now, we can start reading them out. And if you wanted to have one of our panelists specifically answer questions, please address it to them. Otherwise, I can also get it to the person that I think would be most appropriate. We also can all see the Q&A. So ask ahead. We had one question already, which is maybe, Kenny, something you can answer. So the question is the 100,000 Genomes Project a major focus in the teaching and research at Cambridge? And the person says they've mostly seen it as a selling point for, I think, Queen Mary University, London, but curious to see if it's something picked up here.
Well, obviously, it's a very rich data set, and it's increasingly becoming populated by whole genome sequencing data, lots of the phenotypic data, and it's certainly informs, underpins innovation in genomics, particularly as applied to clinical care. I think it's probably most used now from a research perspective. So a number of students in the final year project will use the 100K data for the analysis. So it's certainly one component of the course.
Another question we just had is if we could talk a little bit more about the course admissions process and how competitive the funded places are and what we're looking for in a successful applicant. So again, Kenny, I think you're best placed to answer this. However, I can talk a little bit about the admissions process in general. So there are 3 main courses. So our program is quite complex in that we're offering a lot of flexible pathways through the program. And like I mentioned earlier, there's also the full-time option if that's what you're looking for. But if you're doing it full-time, you can't work next to it. So the program here is the part-time one that is for people who are already working in the field or in a related field. So what we're doing with our admissions, and we could maybe put the links of the 3 main courses. There's the MST, which is a 2-year course. There's the PG certificate, which is a 1-year course. And there's the PG diploma, which is a 2-year course, all part-time. The MST and the diploma are different in that the MST also includes a dissertation. So it's more work. Exactly. So there we go. But in terms of the admissions, it's all the same admissions process. You submit an application, we shortlist, we then send some interview invitations. And the MST is the most competitive because we get the most applications, and it's also the hardest in a way of those pathways. It's the most difficult to balance with already a full-time career probably next to it. I think in general it's hard to give data, but I think we end up maybe having a third of the applicants in the course. Usually people who are offered also do take up the application, take up the place. I think what we're looking for in a successful applicant is something Kenny can talk a little bit more about. And as he had mentioned, we have really broadened at what a successful applicant looks like to us in the last year. And as you can see from our panelists, it is a really broad spectrum.
I mean, obviously, that's a really important question when you're thinking about your application. So, say historically, the program was designed to upskill the genomics workforce, and strong applications come from it. If you look at the panelists today, everyone here's got a very compelling reason to study with us because these skills are absolutely going to be relevant to improving health outcomes. So, I guess a couple of ways of thinking about this. If you come from a health background, and genomics will you can make a tangible contribution to genomics, and the MST is going to make a tangible contribution to your career, you're in a very good position. And those candidates tend to do better through the process. But say we do want to expand the genomics workforce, we do have people who come from backgrounds, for example, in fundraising for biotech, and I think it's really important they also understand principles too. In some ways, it's a little bit more challenging because if you come from that background, it might be slightly harder to make a compelling case. But I think what it comes down to is it was designed to upskill professionals. If you've got a strong professional background, you can make a contribution to the course, and the course is going to help with your career, then you're in a strong position, absolutely. And if you're employed by the NHS, and you get a position on the course, then there's a very good chance that your studies will be funded by NHS England. But again, I'm sure we can come back to that later on. But yeah, I think Jennifer is right, perhaps about the people who apply to this. We don't get huge numbers of applicants because it has a very specific purpose. But saying that, yeah, maybe we're talking about something like a 30% success rate. But the stronger your application is, the more reasoned, the clearer your motivation for study, the better your chances of having a good outcome.
Great, thank you. Another question is, please can someone explain the research project in the second year of the MST? How would this work for a part-time student who's working full-time, which I'm sure is something you all sympathize with, especially those of you who are in the second year right now. How many days off work will I need to request? Do I need to come into Cambridge? Can I do my work outside of working hours? Kivlin and Alejandra, can you maybe speak about that a little bit since this is your life right now?
Yes. Shall I go first, Kevlin? So, I don't think you need to come to Cambridge. It would depends on the research project that you are going to decide. You can do the research project regarding the place that you work in, if that is also related to genomics, obviously. But the time that you have to put, it depends on your availability. So for example, I work full time, but I do compress hours. So I have 1 day a week that is off, and I spend that day of my own time doing the research project and other things. So that is also something that you maybe need to speak with your employer if they're going to give you time for your research project. In my case, that is what I'm doing.
Eris, do you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, if I can share my experience as well. So for my research project, we started talking with my professor about doing a lab-based piece work, and then the COVID pandemic came, and we were not able to go into the lab anymore. So essentially, initially we were planning. I had the option to choose a project that could have been lab-based, but then we actually changed everything to computational. So I did everything at home. And there is a defined sort of amount of work that you need to do, that you need to discuss with your professor. And if every project is different, as Alejandra said, everything will have different requirements and different working hours requirements for you, and you can work flexibly around that. But again, it's also one of those things that as much work as you put in it, that's how much you can get back. And I think I went with mine a bit over the board, a lot more than I needed to do for my project. And but I ended up getting 3 or 4 papers from it, so we're writing them up now. And it's very doable. It's very achievable. You might need to use up some of your own annual leave and weekends time, but it's only 6 or 8 months of hard work. It's not like a PhD level of commitment that you do alongside work.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aris and Alejandra. I definitely agree. One little thing I would add is that there is definitely support if you speak to your line managers, if you check your policy for study leave as well. You might get a provision of maybe a day a month, or also flexible working. You can formally apply to generally, it doesn't matter what field, you can apply for flexible working and do combinations of working from home if it is possible. So it's just using the different resources and opportunities that you have at your in addition to what everybody said. Sorry, Kenny.
I think it's important to emphasize that we don't allocate projects because we recognize you're professionals and you've got to manage it with a busy life. We prefer, so the two ways of looking at this, you can do 10 modules, so you get more of a sort of compressed learning, and then do a literature project, which again uses the modern techniques of narrative synthesis. If you are able to identify a project locally, then we encourage you to do that. And if you're keen to do a project, you don't have any local data, then we can have a conversation about a project, which is probably going to be more focused on data analysis rather than lab research, because the analysis of genomic data is, you know, a critical component of contemporary genomics. So it's extremely flexible and it's designed to work with busy professional careers.
Right. So I think one more thing I want to add is that the research project is generally something that students pick up more seriously in the second year of their MST, but certainly can be discussed during the first year. And it is Kenny who is the initial person that you discuss it with as course director. And then you indeed can also get additional support from a primary dissertation supervisor who could be someone affiliated with the university or not, someone else who's working in the field that you want to work with. And as Eris demonstrated, it can definitely, the dissertation itself can also be a jumping board to do further work in the field later on, and could potentially also be, you could potentially convince your employer that it's beneficial for them to let you do the work as well, right? That it would be something that feeds back into that ecosystem and into the work. I wanted to talk a little bit more about funding as well, because that was the second part of the question about the admissions. And I know the funding is an essential part of our program and the sort of one of the big benefits of our commission with the NHS. So Kenny, do you think you could skip to that funding slide for a minute?
Give me a moment.
Thank you.
What's choices?
So the NHS England funding runs a little bit different from most other course funding that you might be familiar with, other bursaries. For most of those, you sort of apply to the bursary and then bring it with you when you apply to the course. Not so with this. The NHS funding is very much tied up with our course and is intimately linked to exactly how you progress through the course. So the first thing is that you apply for whichever course you wish to enter, so the PG certificate, the PG diploma, or the MST. If you are made an offer, at that time, I contact you. We confirm what exactly you plan to study, which modules, and then I can put you forward for certain modules in the first instance that are eligible for funding. So the funding is per module that you take, and the awards break down into different numbers of modules. So for the PG certificate, you do 4 modules over 1 year. For the PG diploma, you do 8 modules over 2 years. And for the MST, you do 8 modules over 2 years and the dissertation, with the dissertation being worth 4 modules. There's also a permutation where you do more teaching and less dissertation, but I think that's just going to confuse things right now. It's not what most students choose, though perhaps Kenny wants to push people to do more of those in the future. So with those module choices, they can definitely, you can change what you've chosen. It's not, you're not wedded to it forever and ever, and people do change. But if you want to, maybe can you move back to the, sorry, I'm toggling between slides here, but moving back to the overview of modules for next year. One more back, please. There we go. So we will have all of these modules offered next year and the year after. It's the same modules every year in essence that we offer, and you sort of pick and mix your program depending on what you're interested in. And then with the funding, if you're eligible, you then get put forward for the modules that you've chosen. And each module attracts a certain amount of funding, which then comes out. If all the modules are funded, your full course is paid for. We are currently looking at funding a PG cert and a PG dip fully. With the MST, we are looking at funding 2/3 in the first instance, with the last third being depending on what else is available as we approach the end of each funding year, because we need to reserve a certain amount of slots for modular students as well. So Kenny, if you go back now to the NHSE slide, sorry. So once you've received a conditional offer for the course, as I said, I get in touch, we confirm your module choices. And then if you're eligible for NHSE funding, that's that link down there. You might want to check that right now. They have specific rules about whether you are eligible at all. We'll check that at that time, make sure you're eligible, and then we'll put you forward for funding. And that's a whole other application that is independent of the University of Cambridge application. And if that is successful, that money will eventually be given to us and your account is credited with it as soon as you're awarded the funding letter. So that's how that in essence works. There isn't we do all the interviews at the same time for the awards. There isn't an earlier deadline or a better deadline for funding. We look at the whole thing holistically. We know how much money we have in total to award. Our goal, and the goal that NHS wants us to have, is to distribute the money as fairly and evenly as possible across all eligible candidates. So once we have all the students that we've interviewed that we know we want to offer to, we then look how much that ends up being for everyone. But we are committed to making all the PG certificates and PG diplomas fully funded for the next year's intake. I hope that's enough on that subject for now.
Jennifer, do you have a rough idea? How many students are NHSE funded compared to funded outside of that?
I would say it's about half and half.
Yeah, so my gut feeling. So yeah, just I think it's important to emphasize that the course was designed to upskill NHS employees, but it's by no means only for NHS employees. So we welcome applications from across the genomics ecosystem.
Certainly. And quite a few of the students that don't have the NHSE funding, they receive funding from their employer, because again, it is valuable to the employer to have their employees being upskilled through our program. And especially if you work within the NHS, they recognize that this upskilling is important. And maybe, Aris, actually, this would be a good moment for you to jump in with your slide and sort of talk about your career progression, because I do know that, when you're spending every free weekend and every annual leave day on this program, you might want to know what it is you're getting at the end of the day, which is totally understandable.
Yeah. So when I did the masters, just to add the caveat as well. When I did the masters, we had COVID just hit as well. So I think it was March of 2020. So it was just in the second half of my second year, essentially, just when I was about to start my research project. So essentially, I had to do my research project to get extenuating circumstances and do it as a third year project, essentially. So, because there's a couple of people in the chat in the questions, I think, who are worried about the time commitment, which is very understandable. But the way I did it that way, I found it very helpful, but it was also in the context of COVID, so I don't know if that's still an option. Yeah, when I did the masters, it was a very exciting time for the NHS. It still is, in the sense that the Genomic Medicine service was just being created. They were collecting all those different pathology and genetic services into a more defined organizational structure around how genomics will work in the NHS. And because I had this specialist interest even before the masters, I actually started helping my chief pharmacist and my senior pharmacy team into developing and designing the pharmacy components of the genomic medicine service and the business cases that were to follow. And then I joined the program. I convinced them that they needed a specialist pharmacist with genomics in the team, and they let me go to do the masters and gave me the study leave to go and have this protected time for the masters. And then it sort of all fell together with the East Genomic Medicine Service Alliance coming into development. And at the same time, I joined the NHS England genomics unit. So I was doing two jobs at the same time, part-time. So I had one foot in the national strategic team and one foot in the regional delivery team, if you like. And that helped me inform both roles in a very nice complementary way. It's a very unique proposition, to be honest, but it worked quite well. And now that the service is set up more as a more concrete thing, I'm job sharing as a consultant pharmacist with Paul Selby in the East. And there is a lot of work around creating more opportunities for people who want to be interested in genomics to have um, specialist roles in genomics, but not as a specialist as a consultant level, let's say. But at least for pharmacy, the vision is that every specialty should have people with an interest in genomics to be the champions for genomics within their own specialty and organization. So what I'm trying to say is that there's going to be a lot more opportunities for people who have structured genomics qualifications. Genomics is only going to grow in the world everywhere, and the vision for the NHS is that 50% of any healthcare interaction by 2035 will have a genomics component. And in theory, it should also have multi-omics components. Genomics is only the beginning. For personalized medicine, we're going to have so many multi-omics things that are coming in, like proteomics and transcriptomics and polygenic risk scores and things like that. So during my career, essentially, I had so many opportunities where I could find ways to apply my knowledge in genomics. And I also did a half a day a week pre-doctoral clinical academic fellowship where I was trying to develop my research skills towards PhD level research. And for different reasons, I haven't progressed to the PhD yet. And I'm now working with in my other free time as well, I'm working with a company to create some fancy AI and clinical decision support tools around pharmacogenomics, which I'm hoping that will solve a lot of the problems that we're facing in the daily care with pharmacogenomics. So yeah, I think every specialty will have genomics components moving forward. It affects everything in healthcare. And doing the masters will give you that launchboard, that springboard to have that basic scientific understanding of genomics and learning how to apply this in your daily routine healthcare job, and also giving you those tools and enabling you to do research as you do. So I'm still writing up all the work I did for my thesis, for example, and I've progressed it a bit more since then. And we're creating a new area for pharmacogenomics with my supervisor called chronopharmacogenomics, for example. So we're defining it now and bringing more examples and analyzing some data so we can publish it properly as an example of what you could do. Sorry, I'm rambling at this point. Is that answering the question, Jennifer?
That's great. I think it's really interesting because, as you can see, your world is very much within the NHS, and also the NHSE is what commissioned this program. But I just want to emphasize that it's not only NHS employees that take the course, as Kenny said earlier, and it's also not only NHS processes that we discussed. So obviously, the NHS is the big ecosystem of the course of the environment of most people working in the field here in the UK. But we do have, I think, about a quarter of our cohort is usually international. And so, Korpat, do you want to say a little bit more about how, as someone who's not working in the NHS, the program is still helpful to you? And also, Kivlin, I know that you plan to take some of the things you've learned in the program abroad to bring services elsewhere. So how does that look for you?
So let's start from me first. We start working on genomic medicine in Thailand. I think about 5 or 6 years. Sorry, 5 or 6 years ago, and then I'm start on research and with patients care, with also research in genomics, like a Genomic Thailand start a couple years ago, and I want to build up my knowledge and skill in terms of genomic medicine. So I just basically apply directly from Thailand to into Cambridge system. So it's just simply applying to your program. So it's just, and then I explain this in my employers about what I'm gonna do, and then request for funding support for my hospital. Yeah, so that how it works for me.
But so Corpat, even though, we do talk about the NHS and implementation in and through the NHS a fair amount on the program, is it still helpful what you're learning?
I think the thing is that we get the basic information that would be more than enough for me to make implementation in what I'm doing. But this is just my first year. But after I come back to Thailand now, I start thinking about what I supposed to do. Like I can process many things from the course. And now I'm working on submissions for the grants in the Wellcome Trust and NIH. So I think it's really helpful. And genomic medicine basically it's different and have variety across population. So if it doesn't matter, when you study that, you study about basic and technologies, and then eventually wherever you are, you still need to apply to your workplace or your population that you interest. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karpat. Just to add a little bit to that, definitely, I think there's so much that goes on in the genomic medicine course. I mean, I was meeting people from so many different backgrounds, from private sectors, from people working in NHS, people working in research backgrounds, and like just different backgrounds, also in actually doing the part-time as well. And so for me, I realized that also the genomic medicine conversation should have obviously also go across borders, not just in England. And I've been doing some work with Uganda as well because I'm originally from Uganda, and I was just intrigued as well because there's like partnerships and funding that goes there. So I was intrigued whether they have actually thought about any genomic medicine inputs. And actually, I thought about that when I started this course because I was like, there is so much to implement, so much to learn, so much we're given. And I kind of felt like doing the MST gave me the confidence almost to actually approach people, get contact, and see what the situation was there. And actually, they just started and found it really, really helpful to have someone talk to them about simple things like documentation, writing up SOPs, because they've got some of the equipment, but not the processes in place, or not the theoretical like understanding of certain things. And so, yeah, I was really pleased to then meet Paula, one of the alumni from this course as well, who's doing work in Poland. And so we managed to kind of connect because she wants to implement things, all genomics related in Poland, in her field over there. And so we're trying to see how there is like equitable access to genomics in different populations, because as you know, there is quite some underrepresentation in genomic data when it comes to different parts of the like global health. So the course definitely addresses that, talks about it, and talks about things that people are doing to actually improve that. So yeah, I think it's even people from those different contexts and settings coming onto the course would really, really benefit from that, because then they can take back that knowledge. Because I don't live in Uganda currently. It's a bit harder once you're not on ground to actually put things in motion. But if you did the course, went back, implemented things locally, I think that's like a great addition.
I also want to add that Kivlin and Korapat, who are our current student reps, are doing some really good work on trying to get our alumni together. And in fact, they're trying to organize our very first alumni conference this year. So we also have some pretty amazing alumni, including Eris, who are spread across the world, who are also could be points of contact for someone coming from abroad, taking the course, and then going back and wanting to implement something somewhere else. I wanted to pick up on something else that your presentation, Aris, was making me think, which is you're talking about continuing doing some research and doing a PhD now. And Kenny, maybe could you talk a little bit more about how this course is also a jumping off point for, the research ecosystem that is Cambridge University, and how that is in a way also a unique point about our program. And then also how the course might be a jumping off board for further further work as a PhD student down the line?
Well, I think one of the real strengths of the networking opportunities. So a number of our students who want, for example, want to take the academic clinical fellow route have used the course as an opportunity to make contacts and identify projects that they want to get involved with and inform PhD applications. So certainly the sort of research methodologies are embedded throughout the course to give students the confidence to put together credible PhD applications. We want to support students undergoing who want to develop a range of different careers. So this is certainly one aspect of it, and it's something which I'm happy to have that conversation with students about. So it's the course is of pluripotential in some ways. It opens up lots of different avenues. But yeah, absolutely, a number of students every year go on to study for PhDs.
Great, thank you, Kenny. Someone was asking, and I know Korapat's already responding to that, but someone was asking about the physical attendance requirements for the part-time course. Maybe, Kenny, that's also something you just want to highlight and bring out and talk about a little bit. So
the modules are face-to-face. This is a face-to-face course. It's that being in the room, that generating learning together, the networking, the incidental conversations. I'm sure the students will agree that's a really important part of the course. So whether you do 8 or 10 modules, you'd expect it to be in Cambridge, other than there's a workplace module where you can investigate some aspect of genomic medicine in your workplace, which I know that Kivlin's doing, for example, which you don't have to be in Cambridge for. And with the project, you, depending on the project itself, you don't have to be in Cambridge for that. So there are a number of ways you can plan your time as effectively as possible, so you can attend and be present during the taught sessions. And then there are opportunities for learning outside of that.
Thank you. Another question to answer is a very specific question, but I think still worth pulling out. Have any specialized foundation program, formerly academic foundation program doctors completed the course? Yes. And if so, have line managers do change throughout the 2 years, as we know, or potentially 3 years if you're doing it by a progression course. And so how has that worked with the Cambridge University Hospital Research Supervisor on the form, or who would be the correct person to list about the line manager for funding? So in terms of the funding, I can answer that. We definitely have foundation year doctors who come through. It's actually quite a lot of our students are foundation year doctors. Well, a fair amount, I would say. And it's definitely a challenge that the line manager changes each year, especially because one of the conditions of admission is a letter of support, which technically then only covers 1 year. We've had one issue with one student once where the line manager did not support actually the enrollment on the course in the second year, which wasn't great, but we managed to get through that together with the line manager after explaining the program a little bit more. But in principle, with the funding, each year a new funding application is submitted, and we will make sure that goes to the correct line manager who would support that in that year. And then, Kenny, do you want to talk a little bit more about the sort of research and supervision component?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It is challenging, particularly for students in F1. Again, when it comes to an application, at that stage in your training, it may be that it's harder to demonstrate value of the course. So we absolutely have had foundation doctors who have been able to demonstrate that really clear commitment. We haven't, for those who've gone on to the MST and conducted projects, there haven't been any specific problems. Again, we are flexible when it comes to projects. We have that conversation about identifying a project which is consistent with the students' work patterns. But it absolutely is a consideration. And so if you're an F1, it's something you might want to think about. F2, you may be able to think a little bit more about using your time. But the change of line manager has been a consideration.
Thank you. One more thing I want to pick up on. It's not something someone has asked now, but it is I think, a bit of an elephant in the room, especially after hearing all of our amazing students introduce themselves, is a little bit of an imposter syndrome, which I know our applicants often have. And the sort of idea is like, well, how do I fit in with this group? And everyone's so amazing and everyone's so great. And could all of you just maybe talk about that a little bit? And I know, Alejandra, we haven't heard from you for a little while. And I know that sometimes it's like, oh, she's a nurse. And like, so how does that how do you feel about the cohort, and how did you have any concerns about this when you applied, and how does that feel now?
So obviously I had my concerns when I applied because you were expecting all of these, very bright people that they're all the students are, but you find out that they all come from very different backgrounds. In my course, there are doctors, there are some lawyers, I have met some clinical engineers. So I have met a lot of really, really interesting, clever people that come from very different backgrounds. So, and the good thing I think is that you learn from all of them something. They all have their own point of view or the way that they want to use the master, or they maybe this is the first time they just hear of genomics in this big space, and it is really fascinating to see their thoughts, or like Evelyn, what they want to do with the masters. And would say doesn't matter your well, doesn't matter, you can have a very different background from a scientist or a doctor, and this master will still really value for yourself. Don't be afraid to apply, even if you're not a doctor or a scientist.
So I just want to add to Alessandra that we have varieties of students come in, maybe you just graduate, like something like that. But in terms of being a colleagues and friends, I think we have no problem with that at all. They are collaborative and discuss. And genomic medicine, you think this way that Cambridge is not just it's one of the best programs, not in UK, around the world in terms of genomic medicine. So if you think about how difficult I feel this way that when I want to study here, they give us with the materials before each module, right? So you can spend time like a month to read their materials before, and then if you want to understand more, sometimes I read a little bit more before because I want to understand so that I can apply to my workplace as well. So it depends on what is your objectives, and if you have time, if you plan ahead a bit, then it should be fine in the course. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely feel that in my experience it's so vast, but also because you do the modules at different times, different seasons, like the way you choose them, you're definitely going to get to meet different people, and so you'll get used to always hearing a new background or someone doing genomic medicine in the context of psychiatry, the pharmacist like Aris, or there's so many different people, so you just feel like one of those different backgrounds, or so I don't think you will necessarily feel like out of place, but definitely see yourself as a contributor to this ecosystem, and yeah, just networking with others.
Yeah, for me, I echo all those previous points. It's when I did the masters, I was constantly inspired by uh, all of these amazing conversations, all of these different, diverse experiences of people, and all of the different things that people wanted to do around me in my cohort, and hearing from all the professors and lecturers who were coming, who were all leaders in their field, and just understanding how much potential there is in genomics, getting inspired by it and motivated to do more and help contribute into this field, and generally living in that university life again as well, I suppose, was also a really nice experience.
Great, thank you all so much. Kenny, is there anything else that you want to add about the cohort and sort of the way that these very different people come together in the group?
Well, yeah, we sort of touched on this. There are a diverse group of learners coming from different backgrounds. I think Alejandra referred to this as well. So we do have additional support. We don't reteach the program, but we do identify areas outside the formal teaching that we think students would benefit from some additional supports. We run sessions which might talk about, we had a session on using specific genome browsers, for example, just to demystify the process a bit. Sometimes I have sessions around assessments just to clarify what students actually expect. I mean, maybe Kivlin, you could say a little bit about the support outside of formal teaching for what is a large, diverse cohort.
Yeah. Yes, so thank you, Dr. Kenny. So definitely it's really helpful. So one of the places we actually engage is WhatsApp groups and communities as students, and that's been working really, really well. And so whenever we've got like supervisions that are organized by Dr. Kenny, we then kind of mobilize each other and say, hey, this is happening, or do people feel what they would appreciate with extra clarity on this specific assignment? I know bioinformatics was definitely one that got people, yes, please, let's get that extra session and support in. And because we're all really proactive, we really want to get the best out of this program while working part-time. It's just being, engaged and proactive, attending these supervisions across the different modules so that there is like that extra support outside of the formal teaching. There's also really good resources on the VLE, like library support from, if you are like a part of a college, then you can also seek for support from those colleges through tutors. So there is different ways depending on what your needs definitely are.
Thank you. And, as even though you would be registered with professional and continuing education as a part-time student, you're still a University of Cambridge student. And as such, you have access to a real host of resources, some of which are pastoral, some of which are academic. And so that is one of the things that I think we're very strong in and that we do really care about as well. And we're very proactive about, supporting students, reaching out to students if we haven't heard from them for a while. So it is something we do. You had mentioned colleges, Kivlin, and I think it's a good opportunity for me to just clarify a little bit about what the different programs are and what you're sort of applying for and signing up for. Because one of the big differences between the PG certificate, the PG diploma, and the MST is that the MST is a formal degree that the university can confer. And as such, you are matriculated with a college. And the college system of Cambridge. And if you want us to talk more about that, please put it in the Q&A, and we can definitely answer that a bit more. What's unique about the college system? But the PG certificate and the PG diploma students have professional and continuing education PACE as their college, so to speak. So that is not a University of Cambridge college affiliation, but rather a unaffiliated student type where we support you through PACE. And the college affiliation is definitely something that people who apply for the MST for are after. And I think it has been quite supportive for all of you. I also did notice that all of the panelists we have here are MST students, but I promise you, we do have PG certificate students and we do have PG diploma students, and they also are enjoying their time. And in fact, one of the things that is really nice about our program is that we have different student types also all mixing and sort of learning from each other. And if you were to join as a PG certificate student, the advantages there are it's a lower risk entry in a way. It's less competitive. Yeah. It's also less cost, less time, less commitment. And the rules are actually also a little bit more lenient about some of the things you're allowed to do. So it's an entry point. And then if you like it, we have progression option courses, which are the courses that you can find on the website that are called Flex. And those are the ones that you can only apply for if you are in process or have already completed one of our other programs, the PG certificate or the PG diploma. So you can kind of add on an additional year through the Flex courses and thereby progress to the MST ultimately over 2 or 3 years as well. But because you're already in the course with the students that are in the 2-year MST, you can also learn about what is that like. And a lot of the conversations I overhear is students on the PG certificate or students who are considering progressing to the MST talking to the MST students about, okay, what is the research project really like? So I think there is a big mix in our courses. We try to keep it very flexible because we know that people might need all kinds of different arrangements depending on their work situation. Another opportunity, if you go the progression route, is that you can actually take up to 2 years off between the individual components of the course. So you might actually be doing a PG certificate 1 year, take 2 years off, PG diploma 1 year, take 2 years off, and then the research dissertation. And then you've sort of completed the MST over many years, but it's still a University of Cambridge degree. Sorry, we had another question here. There is a variant interpretation module, which I think is new. I think someone mentioned that it's replacing a different module. The dates are different. Yes. Kenny, do you want to talk about it or would you like me to talk about it?
So I'll talk about it. So at NHS England have refreshed the framework for commissioned education. And of course, the course would be diluted if we kept on adding module and module and module. They wanted a variant interpretation module, which is an absolutely critical component of modern genomics, or making sense of changes in the DNA. Our bioinformatics is changing all the time. Our bioinformatics module, it overlapped with the learning outcomes for variant interpretation. So from next year, we've effectively rebranded bioinformatics as variant interpretation. And what was historically advanced bioinformatics will now become bioinformatics because the ambit has changed somewhat. And we also moved the dates around. So it's effectively the old bioinformatics module, but it's happening at a different place in the calendar.
All right. So I think
so Jennifer, there are a couple of questions on the spreadsheet. Do we need to answer those as well, or do we do those another time?
Well, I think we can reply to those questions directly to those who asked them when they signed up for this session. And yeah. I think for now we're at 6 o'clock. So if there are no other questions that people desperately want to ask, I think we'll end the session. And I will end by giving our email address here, which is genomics@pace.cam.ac.uk. So please feel free to email that. It reaches me and Kenny, and I can also forward it to any of our panelists today if you'd like to speak to someone directly. And I know that Kivlin and Korapat, as our student reps, also do want to make themselves available for those conversations. And additionally, if you have any questions about the progression or the funding, I'm very happy to answer those as they pertain to you very specifically.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, sorry, there is one more question, which very technical. Do you prefer 2 academic references or 1 academic and 1 line manager for those in employment? Talking about the actual application. Any thoughts, Kenny?
I mean, we want to get a rounded view of the individual. We need to know you're supported by your line manager. So, I mean, ideally, an academic reference and a support from your line manager would work. If you had 2 academic references, you would still need confirmation from your line manager. Well, that would certainly be for HE funding, wouldn't it? So again, we try not to be too prescriptive here.
There are several times that the line manager comes in addition to potentially being a reference. So there is a letter that your employer needs to generate as part of your application. It's one of the conditions where they say, yes, they support you. Yes, you've discussed. Yes, they're aware of the time commitment, and they will give you study leave or anything that they could possibly give you to make it possible for you to be successful on the course. That is a condition for you to be able to be offered the course by the university. Additionally, the line manager comes in when we do the NHS application for funding because they need to support you. And that is a form that gets sent to them by NHS, and that sort of happens later. Additionally, you could definitely include your line manager as a reference. The references, I think, are just for us to confirm that you are, a keen and intelligent individual who would benefit from the course. All right, Iris, did you want to add anything else as we...
I just wanted to say I can't paste in the chat, but happy for my email to be shared with anyone wanting to ask pharmacy or general NHS questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. And again, please do email us if you have any questions. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.